This is part 2 of my series covering Stranger Things 4. In my previous video, I go over my intentions with the series and review the first episode. I highly encourage that you watch that video before this one. Episode 2 starts with a recap of what happened with Hopper and Joyce at the end of Season 3. Hopper has to sacrifice himself to close the opening to the Upside Down. Seeing no alternative, he jumps into the portal. The way this is shot implies he didn't make the jump and just fell directly on the floor. I think he popped out the other side in Russia, but if you didn't remember that from the previous series finale, then you'd be forgiven for thinking that he just didn't make the jump and Joyce just didn't look for him. Max wakes up from another nightmare, presumably about and goes straight for the paracetamol. You probably shouldn't take those on an empty stomach. Also, use a glass. So the cops arrive to the crime scene exactly after she wakes up and has had her nutritious breakfast. A lot of things in this episode happen exactly when it's most convenient. More on that later. Mr. Munson has a comically strong trailer park accent. He should just have a Hawkins accent, but it is possible that he moved all the way from Texas or Tennessee with great ambitions of one day owning his very own trailer. So the police see the body, and I really hope this is another comedy duo for us to laugh at this entire season. The Byers family, and Argyle, are waiting at the airport for Mike to arrive.
I love teen drama.
Hey Will, maybe don't carry your painting everywhere if you don't want people to see it and ask about it. Will and Argyle bond over their combined love of colourful hats. Elle starts to lie immediately to Mike and we're back in the secret life of Elle and Mikey. And yay, look who it is, the exact same moment, Murray! We just had Argyle. Can we please have a break from the smirky quirky for just a minute? Robin and Steve are still friends. It's still fine. There's also a nice exposition dump describing their exact basic characteristics. Robin turns on the TV at the exact moment the important information for the plot is revealed. This is one of the all-time great overused tropes and was parodied beautifully in Community a decade ago. Lucas and the jocks are recovering from a wild night. Hey, do you remember the 80s?
Thought we were watching Thundercats.
Do you remember the 80s? So again, the police arrive exactly after the character has just learned the information they need for their arrival to be significant. The Duffers really can't help themselves bringing up poor Barb. If you liked her so much, then why did you kill her? Nancy and Fred go for a field trip to investigate because the school basketball game doesn't seem worthy of their groundbreaking school newspaper. Max goes to Dustin's house and for a moment has forgotten how words work. She informs Dustin that she knows it was Chrissy who died. She also says it was Eddie who did it. Eddie has been nice to Dustin, therefore innocent. Max brings up Ted Bundy, as he was known for being nice. When pushed back against this by Dustin, she's like, oh yeah, actually he was probably a monster. I wonder if Murray can manage to take his luggage from the car to the door without anything quirky happening. Joyce is convinced that the ransom is real because it's signed Enzo, a word that only her and Hopper knew, and the entire country of Italy. Okay, so Murray is going to indulge Joyce. Also, why fly all the way from wherever if you were just going to say that it's nothing? You guys are already on the phone. So Murray says that it's possibly the KGB, and Joyce says he just made that up. Well, yeah, he just said it was one of the possibilities, you crumpet. So Murray suggests calling the phone number on the ransom note. And Joyce seems surprised, despite the fact that it was her idea to follow all of this on the slightest chance that Hopper was alive. Side note, wouldn't the phone number need an area code in order to be dialed from the US? Surely that would give away the location of the ransomer, and also it contains a time zone. So the Russians are just waiting for Hopper on the side that he popped out. There's some classic mild TV torture. I do feel like there's easier ways to choke someone. Remember Elle's teen line drama? Ah, right on cue. Do you think that the company that Argyle works for just spent 36 seconds with him and built their entire business around him? Surfer Boy Pizza basically describes his entire character. Hey, do you remember the 80s? Pinball, arcade, disc hockey, cups. Why do you keep lying? I'm half expecting them to burst into song like it's High School Musical or something. Mike didn't bring socks. They only think to mention it now so Will and Elle can talk about Elle's dishonesty without Mike around. Why couldn't he have just had to use the loo? Did roller rinks actually used to sell socks? Are they used? Ew. Hey Will, where's your painting that you were carrying around everywhere only to have someone ask about it? You don't seem to need to carry it around everywhere now, huh? And perfectly on time, the only people that she doesn't want to arrive at Rinkorama are exactly who show up. I wonder if there'll be some form of conflict. So much of the plot relies on things just happening with perfect timing that it makes me wonder if free will is even a concept in this universe. Jason gets questioned by the police and they make a point of mentioning that he's underage and shouldn't be drinking beer. I know the character's supposed to be in high school, but come on. So the police accidentally, by being incompetent, give away a bunch of information about the case, potentially jeopardizing it. Jason leaves the investigation, and honestly, I thought he was going to go straight into the woods to immediately look for Eddie. The way it's shot implies he's springing directly into action, like dude's on a Terminator vibe, but actually he's going out to have a yell.
Funny story. The script called for me to say yes, but I gave it a little twist.
Max and Dustin go to use the video store as their base of operations to find Eddie. Why do they act and do all the annoying stuff first only to explain right after? Just tell them first, it'll be easier for everyone. Nancy and Fred have some nice exposition furthering the super interesting plot about how her and Jonathan are going to break up. They arrive at the trailer park crime scene and obviously lie to the officer. It's so blatant. Like, wink wink, the audience know you're lying, but the cop isn't a potato, of course he'd see that you're lying too. And once again, we have a character who suffers from a horrific, traumatizing visual hallucination only to say, nah, I'm fine. You just saw him as a demon. Tell them.
Fine. I'm fine.
He wasn't. With the obvious lying and massively strange behavior, this cop would in no way let them through. Oh, wait, he does. Now we have Jonathan's side to the imminent breakup. He wants to go to college with Argyle instead of Nancy. And I can see why.
Remember the 80s?
How much B-roll of roller skating did they get? I can see now why this episode needed to be an hour and 17 minutes long. Why is Angela acting like she knows Elle lied to Mike about them being friends? She's never been fake nice before. So then they set up this elaborate bullying prank against Elle, kind of like a flash dance, but really mean. If they just arrived and saw Elle, how did they choreograph all of this? And why did the DJ allow this to happen? Like, if it's his job, then as soon as they were clearly bullying someone, he'd stop it. So Will tells Mike the truth about what's been going on just in time for him to do nothing about it. He tries to stop the music playing rather than just to go and get Elle away from the obvious threat that the bullies pose. Also, how did Milkshake Bro know that the dude would turn off the music at that exact moment? Also, I am aware that I've said exact a lot in this video so far, and I apologize, but there are a lot more exacts to come. So Mike tries to get to Elle, and he can't make it through the small crowd, or go around them, or roll back to the side and catch her that way. It's a rink. It's round. There is absolutely no way he could lose track of her and not catch up to her. He did. Cue up the side adventure music. Here we go. This is easily the most contrived and ridiculous scene of the show so far. So the number that they get is for a payphone that's on a public street. They call and the guy answers first time. He's interrupted by an old lady. I wonder if what she says will be relevant for later. What if the old lady had arrived 10 minutes earlier? Or anyone else for that matter? I counted 8 people around the phone booth in the wide shot, none of whom are the ransomer. Well, then our contact would have just missed the call, the dynamic duo may have finally accepted it was a hoax and moved on, and the Hopper plot is over. But no, it's like everyone read the script so that they could all do exactly what they're supposed to do when they're supposed to do it. So they're sure it's not the KGB. Why? Dunno. There's a lot of jumping in this show. Jumping towards something. Hopper survived their mild TV torture, so they realize he's strong. They can use him for something. A general arrives to Hawkins as shit just got real. Jason thinks that Dungeons & Dragons is responsible for Eddie turning evil and killing Chrissy, which is surprisingly sympathetic of him. He's rallying the jocks to go on a manhunt in order to stop this from happening again. Okay, forget what I said earlier about that scene being the most contrived, it's this one. The guys basically use magic to find where Eddie is hiding. So they use the video store database to find the exact location of Eddie. How? I don't know, 'cause something. Shut up. There's that thing again, in the distance. I feel like jumping. Characters are only as intelligent as the people writing them. They close the store, and they are definitely fired for that one. Nancy tries to investigate a dog, but settles for a rooster. Foghorn Leghorn tells her he doesn't believe Eddie did this. It must have been Victor Creel. I say, as far as I know, he's still locked up, but it was definitely him. Fred starts to have another hallucination, and rather than go to the many cops that should be around, given the fact that it's an active crime scene, he wanders off into the woods just to make sure he's alone when at best he collapses from the brain aneurysm he's clearly having. Nancy notices that Fred is missing. Keep in mind that it is currently daytime. She shouts his name repeatedly, which the many cops around would surely hear and go and check on. She doesn't even think to ask any of them, or check her car, or anything logical. Fred has his inevitable hallucination. There's some okay imagery here. Back with Hopper, and we have the cliched, captured character has head shaved, followed by the literal next shot in Writing for Dummies, spray shaved head person with hose. He's told if he runs, he's dead. Got it. Oh hey, that old lady knocking was crucial to them figuring out the plot. Who would have guessed? So we gallop our way over a chasm of contrivance to an ocean of conclusion to learn that he's in a prison, and Enzo is not an Italian restaurant owner, but the guard that's been looking after Hopper, who has been waiting by a payphone every day at 12 instead of eating lunch. I hope his colleagues haven't noticed. So back with the boys so that they can have their gleeful argument. They can't find Elle. I assume it's because they were all afflicted by temporary blindness for at least 43 seconds while she ran away. Why do none of the staff at Rinkorama care about all the stuff that's gone down here today? The bullies at the very least would have been removed for spilling the milkshake all over the floor. Management is really slacking here. So Elle decides to come out of her hole and ask Angela to lie to Mike for her. The bully says something pretty terrible, but Elle reacts way over the top and bonks the bejesus out of her nose. Remember, like in the opening scene? Is she evil? Huh? What do you think? I normally hate when a show does flashbacks to highlight points that they're trying to make, but I'll actually allow it here as so much nonsense has happened since then, you could be forgiven for forgetting that this was our opening to the season. An episode ago. So they find Eddie, he's clearly shaken. The Scooby Squad claim that they just want the truth. He does the old,
"You won't believe me."
and then Max follows with page 37 of Writing for Dummies.
Try us.
Get it? Because they done seen stuffs before. Back with Nancy, and remember earlier I said to keep in mind that it was daytime? She's still looking for Fred in the same small trailer park, and it's pitch black. At best, that means she spent 30 minutes not asking any of the many cops for help. So she finally tells the cop. He's obviously very annoyed. You probably shouldn't have let these two super suspicious people in here, Officer Daniels. Also, if Fred had just been honest about his demon vision, then he would have been observed when he meets his demise, and it would have been on record what happened, and that's the end of the season. I mean, there's no mystery anymore. You see how the writers have to dance their way around so much logic just to make there actually be a story? Eddie describes what he saw, and here we have what I consider a missed opportunity. What if there was more than one alternative dimension? So they've defeated the Upside Down. But now, as Vecna attacks internally, they could face off against the Inside Out. A threat that even our experienced gang have no prior knowledge of. It could be a fresh way to bring in some monstrous horror without rehashing what we've seen 3 times already.
Vecna has a goofy voice.
I wonder if the people who created Dungeons & Dragons were from Hawkins, or if it's entirely coincidental that all of the demons and curses parallel the game so closely. I smell a lawsuit. Vecna can't smell anything at all. Vecna also looks really dumpy, like the costume doesn't fit quite right. He's a bit of a chungus. So Fred dies just like Chrissy. At the very least, for the last part of this episode compared to the first, I wasn't giving whiplash from the ever-changing tones. This episode has some really contrived writing and coincidences to allow it all to happen. It's death by 1,000 cuts. I'm starting to worry about the project I've taken on, as on repeat viewing this episode was much weaker than I had initially thought after I'd first seen it. Up next is episode 3.